40 and still no husband, Lady Carus said, loud enough for the whole conservatory to hear. One does wonder what is wrong with the poor creature. She lifted her fan, and the laughter spread through the room like a spilled glass of wine, and the Duke of Quillbourne, standing unseen behind a screen of orange trees, watched the woman they meant lower her cup very slowly to its saucer without a tremor. He had come to the Ferrelton assembly to be bored. That was the honest truth of it. Percival, 9th Duke of Quillbourne, had come to be bored and then to leave, because that was what he did at these gatherings. He arrived. He was hunted by mothers and their painted daughters. He endured an hour, and he went home to his library where nothing simpered and nothing schemed. He had expected the usual parade. He had not expected to be arrested where he stood by the sight of a woman being cut to ribbons and refusing to bleed. Her name, he would learn, was Marguerite Selwyn. She was tall and plainly dressed in grey silk that had clearly been turned and mended more than once, and she wore no jewels save a small dark cross at her throat. She was not young. The candlelight was honest about that, and so was she. There was no paint upon her, no artful curl arranged to soften the years, and yet as the laughter washed over her she did not flinch, did not flush, did not hurry from the room. She simply set down her cup, folded her hands, and said, in a voice as clear and cool as spring water, "I find, Lady Carus, that a woman may be a great many things by 40. She may be wise, she may be content, she may even be kind. Only one of those requires a husband, and I am told it is not the last." The room did not quite know what to do. Lady Carus's fan stopped. A young man near the harp laughed once, sharply, before he could catch himself. And the Duke, from behind his orange trees, felt something he had not felt in years, a quick, startled admiration, like the strike of flint. He did not go home. That was the first thing that was strange about the evening. He stayed and he watched her. And he learned by asking the right careless questions of the right talkative people that Marguerite Selwyn was the daughter of a country parson lately dead, that she had turned down 2 offers in her youth, one for a man who beat his hounds and one for a man who wept over his debts, and that she had spent the years since keeping her widowed uncle's house and teaching the village children their letters for nothing but the pleasure of it. She had no fortune. She had no title. She had, the gossips agreed with relish, no prospects whatsoever, and she had committed the unforgivable sin of not seeming to mind. "They cannot forgive her for being at peace," the Duke said aloud, and the footman offering him wine looked alarmed, and he waved the man away. He should have left it there. A powerful man learns early to admire from a distance and let the world alone. But when the dancing began and Marguerite Selwyn stood quietly at the edge of the room where the unwanted stand, watching the couples with an expression not of longing but of genuine, unenvious delight, the Duke of Quillbourne crossed the whole length of the floor, past the daughters who gasped and the mothers who clutched, and he stopped before her and bowed. "Miss Selwyn," he said, "will you do me the honor?" She looked at him for a long moment. She did not flutter. She did not pretend confusion. "Your Grace," she said, "I think you have mistaken me for someone you would find useful." It was the last answer he expected, and it undid him entirely. "I have mistaken you for no one," he said. "That is rather the difficulty. I have never met anyone remotely like you in my life." She let him lead her out. He felt the whole room turn to stone behind them, felt 50 pairs of eyes fasten upon his back, and he found he did not care in the least. She danced well, though a little out of practice, and when he told her so she laughed, a real laugh, low and surprised, as though she had forgotten she owned one. "You must not do this again," she told him gravely as they turned. "You will be talked of." "I am always talked of," he said. "It is the great tedium of my life. This is the first time in a decade the talk has been worth the trouble. You do not know me." "No," he agreed. "But I know Lady Carus, and I have wanted to see her silenced for 11 years, and you managed it in a single sentence." A man remembers such a service. She did not answer that, but something moved behind her steady eyes, and when the music ended she curtsied and thanked him with a plainness that was worth more than all the practiced gratitude he had ever received. And then she slipped away before he could ask to call upon her, and he stood in the middle of the floor like a fool and let her go. He called at her uncle's house 3 days later. It was a modest place, a grey stone house at the end of a lane, with a garden gone gloriously to seed and a fat old spaniel asleep on the step. When the Duke of Quillbourne's carriage stopped before it, curtains twitched all down the lane. He knocked himself, having sent no card, and it was Marguerite who opened the door with ink on her fingers and a look of pure astonishment on her face. "You," she said. "Me," he agreed. "I have brought nothing appropriate, having no idea what one brings a woman who wants nothing. So I have brought myself, which I am told is very grand, and a book I thought you might argue with." She stared at the book. It was a slim volume of essays, much disputed that season. Slowly, the corner of her mouth turned up. "You had better come in," she said, "before the whole lane faints." Her uncle, a gentle deaf old man, was delighted to have a duke in his parlour and understood perhaps a third of the conversation, which suited everyone. Marguerite made tea herself, there being one aged servant who did the heavy work, and she poured it without apology for the chipped cup she gave herself and the whole one she gave her guest. And they talked. That was the thing the Duke would remember afterward, that they simply talked. For 2 hours about the essays and about the village and about a great many things he had never been able to say to anyone, and she argued with him, freely and fearlessly, and laughed at him twice. And he went home that evening feeling as though a window had been opened in a house he had thought sealed for good. He called again the following week, and the week after that. The county noticed, of course. A duke does not call 3 times upon a penniless spinster without the whole country hearing of it, and the whispers turned, as whispers do, from puzzlement to venom. Lady Carras led the pack. She had not forgiven Marguerite for the silence in the conservatory, and now she had a fresh grievance, for it was intolerable that a woman who had been mocked should be courted by the most desired man in 3 counties while prettier and richer girls were passed over. So the story was invented and set loose, that Miss Selwyn had entrapped him, that she had schemes, that she was after his fortune, that a woman of 40 who had never married must be either cold or cunning, and that a duke of sense would come to his senses soon. He heard it. He was meant to hear it. And it was for Marguerite's sake and not his own that it enraged him, because he saw what the others did not, that the whispers reached her too, in the village, in the shops, at church, and that though she bore them with the same unbending grace she had shown in the conservatory, they cost her. He saw the cost on grey afternoon when he arrived unexpected, and found her sitting very still in the seeded garden with an open letter in her lap and her face turned away, and when she looked up her eyes were bright with the effort of not weeping. "They have written to my uncle," she said, before he could speak, "anonymous, to warn him that I am making him a laughing-stock, and that your grace will tire of the joke and leave me ruined, and that I ought to release you for your own good and his." She folded the letter with hands that were not quite steady. "They are not wrong that I have nothing to offer you. That part is true, whoever wrote it." The Duke of Quillbourne stood over her in the ruined garden and felt his anger turn cold and clear and useful. "Marguerite," he said, and it was the first time he had used her name. "Look at me. Do you believe I am tiring of a joke?" "No," she whispered. "That is the worst of it. I do not." "Then marry me," he said, not to answer them. Not to silence Lady Carras, though God knows I would enjoy it. "Marry me, because in 40 years I have talked with a great many clever women and been bored by every one of them, and in 3 months I have not been bored by you for a single hour, and I have understood at last that this is the whole of what a man wants and almost never finds. I am not offering you a rescue. I am asking you to rescue me, who has been half asleep his whole life until you told Lady Carras where to put her fan." She laughed then, a wet, startled, marvelling laugh, and she pressed her inky fingers to her mouth, and he sat down beside her on the cold bench and took her other hand, and she let him. "You must be certain," she said, "because if you take me before all of them and then falter, they will destroy me, and I have made my peace with a small life, and I could not survive being made a fool of a second time. So be certain, Percival. I will not hold you if you are not." "I have never been certain of anything before in my life," he said. "I am certain of you." He married her in the great cold church at Quillbourne, and he did not do it quietly. That was deliberate. He invited the whole county, Lady Carras foremost among them, and he seated the mockers in the front pews where they would have the finest view, and he made Marguerite Selwyn his duchess in a plain gown of ivory silk she had chosen herself, with the small dark cross still at her throat. And when the vows were done, he turned her to face the assembled elite of 3 counties, and he spoke. "You will have heard," he said into the ringing silence, "that this marriage is a folly. That the Duchess of Quillbourne entrapped me, or schemed for me, or is too old or too poor or too proud to be loved. I have brought you all here today so that you may look upon her and upon me, and understand once and for all that every word of it is a lie. And that the persons who spread such lies have told you more about themselves than they will ever know about her." His gaze found Lady Carus, white to the lips in the front pew, and rested there. "My wife is the wisest and the kindest and the least self-pitying soul I have ever encountered, and she was all of these things at 40 and unwed, when you laughed at her, which is more than any of you managed in the whole of your gilded lives. I have chosen her. I would choose her again in front of the king, and any door in this county that is not open to my Duchess is a door I shall take care never to darken again." No one laughed this time. No one so much as breathed. And Marguerite, standing at his side in her plain ivory silk, did not gloat and did not preen. She only slipped her hand into her husband's and squeezed it once, steady as she had ever been, and that was the whole of her triumph, and it was enough. The doors opened after that. They always do. Lady Carus, who understood at last which way the wind blew, called at Quillbourne within the fortnight with a smile like a drawn bowstring, and the new Duchess received her with a courtesy so perfect and so cool that it was worse than any slap, and poured her tea into a whole cup, and let her go having gained precisely nothing. The invitations came. The whispers turned to praise, as whispers do, for the world always adores what a duke adores. But Marguerite cared nothing for the invitations, and this, her husband found, was the thing he loved best of all. For she did not become grand. She kept teaching the village children their letters in a schoolroom he built her, and she brought her deaf old uncle to live in the dower house with his fat spaniel, and she filled the vast silent halls of Quillbourne with argument and laughter and the smell of ink. In the evenings she read to him by the fire and disputed with him over essays, fierce and free, and he would sometimes fall silent in the middle of her speaking simply to watch her face in the light and marvel that he had very nearly gone home that first night bored. "You are staring," she told him once without looking up from her book. "I am," he agreed. "I intend to do a great deal of it. I have 40 years of not knowing you to make up for, and I mean to be thorough." She lowered the book then, and looked at him over it. This woman they had all mocked, and no one had wanted. This woman who had refused to bleed, and the smile that came into her steady grey eyes was worth more to the Duke of Quillbourne than his title and his lands and every jewel in his family's keeping. "Then be thorough," she said softly, and reached across the firelight for his hand. And he was. For the rest of their long and happy life, he was.